Hi again, folks. Nick Cortez for Creation Army TV. This is part 3 of my series on art brushes, and today we'll be talking about color control. I'll assume that you've already watched my part 1 and part 2 on art brushes, which is creation of art brushes and replacement of art brushes, and part 2 dealt with sizing, which we see right here on my screen. So if you haven't watched those videos, go ahead and watch them now so that you won't be totally lost during this one. So we'll talk about color control with art brushes. You might have noticed that a lot of the art brushes that I made were straight black, like this star example and like this black wedge example, which is very tiny down here. And so, you know, why am I making all of these straight black art brushes? I have a good reason for that. In previous jobs that I've had to make a lot of art brushes, and I've had to deal with a lot of spot colors. And sometimes, especially when you're making a cartoon baseball that's streaking through the air, you want to put a red streak behind it, or you might want to change that streak to purple or orange in a few, as a if your customer asks for a revision, or you just simply change your mind. So how do we control the color of our art brushes so that they're not just black all the time? So the reason that I make things black is because of tint control. I'll zoom in a couple of times here and we'll talk about tint control. If I zoom way in, we'll all remember this original 1-point triangle that I made, and it was pure black. If I go ahead and make a new triangle art brush, I'll call it wedge number 3, you'll notice that I've skipped this colorization method in all of my videos. So what's happening? With none selected, the art brush will look exactly like your original artwork. But with tints selected, your art brush will be tints of the color of the original artwork. In other words, this black wedge. And the reason I'm using black, I'll hit OK and we'll take a look at why. The reason I'm using straight black, 100% black, is because 100% black comes out to equal the 100% tint of any color that you want to apply to an art brush. Here's what I mean by that. Remember that wedge number 3 that I just made, and I programmed it so that it's tints. So if I draw a simple line using this art brush, notice that it's still black. I'll hit up a few times on the stroke panel so it's thicker. Notice that it's still black because it's doing a tint of black, but if I use blue, then it will be a tint of blue. And because it's straight black, it's 100% blue. If I had made this art brush in a different shade of black, for instance, I'll duplicate this down here. I'll make the original triangle, let's say 50% black. So now it's this gray color. I'll hit new art brush like that, and I'll do wedge number 4. I'm going to use tints again, and you'll notice when I make or duplicate this art brush and use my new wedge number 4, you'll notice that this is a 50% tint of this blue, this deep blue that I'm using in this, but there's a huge difference here, So your original artwork, if it's pure black, you can achieve the purest shade, the purest tint of your spot colors along your art brush. So in the case of this baseball with this streak behind it, the original art brush, or it's called hair right here, but because I was talking about hair earlier, but you can rename it. So I will just double click on this, and it's made from this little tiny group of triangles, which are pure black. So I don't have to actually replace the art brush at all. I can just double click. I'll zoom out because we want to see the live example. So we're focusing on this art brush line, which I want to change to red or orange or whatever the team color might be. And I'll just double click on it, and let's call it swoosh instead of hair. And I'm not going to change the direction or the width or anything. I'm just going to change the colorization method to tints, and I'll just hit OK. And it'll ask me if I want to apply to strokes. When I hit this, you'll notice no change whatsoever because it's still a tint of pure black. But if you go ahead and choose and apply red to the stroke, now we have a nice art brush that is a nice swoop behind this ball that makes a little bit more sense, and it might be, might be orange or something. So you can do all kinds of cool things with tints. Now the other colorization method for that, this is the most common one, but the other colorization methods for these art brushes get a little bit more complex, and I barely ever use them. But I'll show you a little bit about how they work. Using this example again, I'll duplicate these triangles, and I will go ahead and just randomly choose shades of gray for some of these, and I'll leave one of them pure black. Here we go. I'll leave this one almost white. So here is the artwork for this new art brush I'm about to make, just to demonstrate the other colorization methods. I'll hit new brush, art brush, sorry. And now I'll name it swoosh 2. Doesn't matter what you name it. And I'll use tints and shades. This colorization method relies on basically tints and shades of your, how do I phrase this? This colorization method relies on the most prominent colors in your artwork, and you'll notice that you can use key color. There's a little light bulb over here which will actually, if you need more information, will give you some tips and help on controlling tints and shades for your artwork. But you'll notice that there's a little key color eyedropper. You don't actually use this on your artboard, but you use it on your preview window here, and you can tell Illustrator what your key color is. Right now it's guessing that this middle gray in the longest triangle is my key color, and if I click on any one of these, it will actually change. I'll leave it on that little middle gray to show you what happens. So I'll just hit OK, and I'll make a line that uses that new art brush that I made, swoosh 2. Okay, so I'm still, using just a shade of gray, but if you go ahead and let's use this red as an example. So the key color, which was this middle gray triangle here, is now the shade or the tint that is 100% of this red. And the other items in my brush are now tints and shades of that red. Notice that everything is basically that same red. The pure black triangle is pure black. If I had a pure white one in my art brush here, it would be pure white. So you get a range of tints based on your key color. How do I change that? Let's double click the art brush, swoosh 2, and I'll change my key color to this black, pure black triangle. Alright, there will be no change for some reason in the preview. Again, I think it's a glitch. I'll hit OK and apply, and there seems to be no change. Oh, that's the reason that there's no change, again, is because this pure black shade stays pure black no matter what. Same if I had a pure white triangle in here, it would just be pure white. So this one can be nice if you're trying to pull off this look. Again, this can be nice for characters, hair, if it's just gonna be all shades of brown or blonde or whatever. And then the last method is hue shift. I'll create another art brush based on this, and we'll take a look at what hue shift is all about. I'll hit new brush, new art brush, okay, and I'll change the colors. I'll make this swoosh 3, and the colorization method hue shift. So hue shift acts a little bit like tints and shades. Again, there's a key color, and it's guessing that this middle gray on the longest triangle is the most prominent color. So the hue shift, which is hue is, along the rainbow, you've got your red, yellow, orange, green. Those are hues. And so hue shift is going to shift my base color of these items based on the key color, which you can freely select. And I'll just leave it on this middle gray for now. I'll hit OK. And now I'll just duplicate this line, but I'll apply swoosh number 3. And you can see what happened here. So if I change this, say, to green, I don't know. I don't think this is a very good example, but if I had, let's say in my original, if I had a red triangle and a green triangle and an orange triangle in here, and I'm just changing these to sort of pure colors, and I dragged this in, and I'm just going to replace this art brush, which I talked about in video number 1. I'm holding Alt, and I'll replace it with this. So now you can see that it is guessing this green is my key color because it's the most prominent color in the artwork. I'll hit OK and we'll see what happens. I'll hit apply. Okay, so now my line, or my green triangle in the original, I have colored green. You can see it here in the stroke. But if I change that to blue, then this green triangle will change to blue, and all of the other colors will be a variation of hue. They won't actually look like the original. I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll see what happens. I'll hit blue. So now this long triangle, which in the original is green, is blue in that pure shade, but the other colors are a variation or a different pick of hue. So you can get some crazy combinations with hue shift, and it can be difficult to control. It takes a lot of practice. This type of art brush is great if you're making, for instance, a school of fish and you want them to all sort of vary in color. So you draw a couple art brush lines, or not a couple, maybe you draw a school of 50 fish, and they're all just one art brush. In other words, your parent art is the fish. Then you can individually select each one of those fish, and you can color them completely differently if you want to, and they'll all sort of vary. So this is good for that, but my most common, and I think you'll find your most common form of color control with art brushes, is tints. And one last example I'll show you about tints is, and I'm going to edit swoosh number 1. If I can find it in the panel, it's right here. Again, to edit this artwork, you can pull it right out onto blank artboard. Out here off of the artboard, you can just drag it right here. And I'll zoom in. So this is my original artwork with an invisible rectangle around it, which I delete. So these were all pure black, and they resulted in that solid orange line. But I'm going to actually take each one of these and sort of vary their tint of black to sort of random values. There we go, maybe something like that. And I will go ahead and replace whatever it was, swoosh. So that's this one here. And I'll hit, and remember it was tints. So I'll hit OK and apply. And when I zoom out and move down, sorry for all the zooming, you'll see that this art brush is now reflecting the varying tints of those 4 triangles, and that can get you an interesting result as well. I'll probably be doing a 4th video on art brushes, and I'll show you some more complex examples of what you can do and how you can come up with some pretty crazy, interesting artistic results. And we'll also talk about the limitations of art brushes and what you cannot make into an art brush. And I'll show you workarounds for each one of those things that you cannot do. So thanks for watching Creation Army TV. Stick around for part 4 of art brushes. Thank you.